In The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy declared, "There's no place like home," she sure got it right. If you ask people about where they'd like to live as they age, odds are the answer you'll hear is at home. But is that necessarily the best choice? And if you do stay in your home, what steps should you take to remain there safely for as long as possible? David Schell has made himself at home on our set to share some homing advice. David is the executive director of Breckenridge Village not-for-profit retirement community in Willoughby. Happy to have you on the show again.
Nice to be here, Lori. Thank you.
I know in your position you must hear all the time, a retirement home is not where I want to be. They're going to have to take me kicking and screaming out of my home if I'm going to be moving. People want to stay in their homes, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. At Breckenridge, over 500 of the residents are independent living, so most of those people are coming from their homes for the first time. And I think the home represents really everything that we've worked for. The hard thing is that the house that was designed, that we've lived in for 30 or 40 years, while that worked while we were younger, it may not be the place to be when we get older.
Things change, right?
Absolutely.
You've been on the show before talking about some of the senior speak that people have to worry about as they age. Is there some terminology out there that actually describes this, wanting to stay at home?
Well, actually, the one term that's used a lot is aging in place. And if you kind of think of the inverse of a child kind of growing up, we kind of go through that same thing as we get a little bit older. And as you think of aging in place, it's really starting to think of the needs as you change and adapt and how you're going to manage those things as you do get older.
Do you have guidelines for somebody to really think about whether aging in place maybe at their home is appropriate for them?
Absolutely. I think if you look at the terms kind of what it takes to live independently, meals, transportation, bathing, dressing, medications, all of those things, if you're able to manage those things and the household chores, that's a pretty good indication that you're able to do well today. But what happens in the tomorrows to come?
Yeah, that's a problem. How do you help people recognize when those things are happening, those changes are coming?
Well, I think for a lot of individuals, it's kind of going through the dialogue and talking process, and that's what we spend a lot of time in helping people kind of come to the conclusions that if you really do want to stay in your home, come up with a plan to do that. Sometimes there's financial reasons, but I think a lot of times people think, well, I'll just call on family or friends, and that'll be the answer. And that may be a short-term Band-Aid, and you may be able to rely on your family, but is that really a realistic plan?
That's true. What are some of the services that you might want to be thinking about as you age in place?
Well, driving is always one that as we're able to drive, that's a wonderful thing. But if I'm not able to drive, how am I going to take care of my transportation? And then if you put a list of all the transportation things that
it's
you do,
huge.
It's monumental. And so I think those are the safety net things that are provided in the retirement community that work very, very well.
You don't have to worry about it. It's there.
Absolutely.
You've got a built-in, support system in a retirement community. What about the financial realities? I mean, people want to stay at home, but there's all these issues, and how do they address the financial piece of things, and what do they think about?
Absolutely, and I think sometimes we just talk about the practical realities where they'll say, well, maybe it's going to cost me more to live in the retirement community, and then we start saying, well, if you bring services in, have you really thought about the cost? And even at $10 an hour, if you kind of add that up, the costs are tremendous, and then you still have your ongoing home cost.
That's true. 24-hour daycare isn't cheap, so.
It's not.
My thanks to David Schell for taking us down the yellow brick road today. And remember, like David says, you don't have to go it alone. If you're interested in a free booklet of definitions and want more information on aging in a home-like setting, such as Breckenridge Village, you'll want to write down the number that's coming up next.
To find out more, call Breckenridge Village at 440-954-8359 or visit their website, www.breckenridgeohio.org. Next, edible art.